This is so big now, Chris. We've even got a live audience.
All right, guys.
Unbelievable. I hope they're drinking too.
Welcome, everyone, to our Keystone with Kenny series. Tonight's special guest is Cris Collinsworth. And without further ado, we're going to pass off to Mr. Kenny Anderson here.
Thanks, Kevin. I am so happy. Keystones with Kenny is back. We've spared no expense this time. We're coming to you live from the Keystone Light Studio in New York City. Oh, no, this is my garage, but we're coming to you live anyway. And I really want to thank Chris from Stagnero Distributing in Cincinnati and Deanna with Molson Coors. They worked it out. So Keystone Light is our sponsor for this. And of course, it all goes to benefit the Kenny Anderson Alliance. And, ways that you can help is to buy our raffle tickets. So if you go to KennyAndersonAlliance.org, you'll see some of our raffle items. The first one is an autographed jersey from me. We're not going to draw the raffle till we get $500 worth of tickets. The second item is a unique helmet. There's only 6 of them I know of, and that's because I did them all. They're half the old style. They're half the new style with the stripes of the Bengals helmets. I've signed those. We're not going to draw that till we get $750. And then whenever I'm in Northern Kentucky, the first place I go to dinner is Walt's Hitching Post. They're going to let my wife, Christy, and I host 4 people for dinner. And since alcohol is included, we're not drawing that till we get $1,000. And then at the end of the season, what we're going to do is we've got 4 Ultimate Airlines shuttle tickets. And, if you've never flown Ultimate Air, if you want to fly, that's the only way to fly. And, so before we get started here, a big shout out to my executive producer, my wife, Christy. She designed the set. Our friend Tim built it. We've got Darlene designed the poster, lighting here for our audience, our special guests in my garage. Was done by Bob and Sue, our next door neighbors. David Kubicki gave me the picture of Chris and Bob printed it for me. I'm not sure they came, Chris, because of you and I, but I said anybody that showed up got free Keystone Light. So, but without further ado, my first guest, an old friend, came to the Bengals in 1981, was a second-round draft choice. All he did is play 8 years for the Bengals, went to 3 Pro Bowlers. Now he's the top analyst for NFL football. He's on NBC's Sunday Night Football. It's the highest-rated primetime show on television. It has been for as many years as I can remember. He's won 15 Emmys. My good friend, Cris Collinsworth. Chris, thanks for being with us on our opening show.
What's happening, brother? Thank you. Thank you. Christy, what's going on?
They're into the Keystone Light already.
I can tell. I was just trying to figure out $1,000. You better go for $2,000 for that thing, that happy hour with you, because you can blow through that in appetizers, man.
Yeah. First of all, how are you and Holly doing up there? Everything going okay?
We're doing great. No, we're doing great. Everybody's good. I've got the grandbabies here and
oh wow,
we're having some fun. Yeah, it's been a little bit of full go. We've got a 2-year-old grandbaby and we've got about a 2-month-old grandbaby, so a boy and a girl, and it's been fun.
I tell you what really gets fun is I just had my granddaughter Juliana, who is 6, who called me on her watch on the way to go to Ava's house. So that the special days are yet to come.
You remember back in the day when we all thought Dick Tracy and having a phone on his watch was like that could never possibly happen? Here we are.
Now you were drafted in 81. The Bengals were coming off a 6-10 season. That was our first year under Forrest Gregg. 79 was the worst team I was ever on. 78, I broke my hand. The coach got fired. We weren't very good. Then in 81, the Bengals draft David Verser with the first pick in the draft, and then we take you in the second round. What was your thoughts about coming to Cincinnati then?
On draft day, if you'll remember, in the first round, it was David Verser that got taken, like the 10th overall pick, something like that. And my mom was told by my agent when they passed, and I'm getting a lot of feedback, Kenny. I don't know if I can do anything about that, but
great.
Okay, good. So my mom was told by my agent when the Bengals passed in the first round, just let it go. Just let it go because Cincinnati's a terrible town, terrible organization. I didn't want him going there anyway. This is so much better that the Bengals didn't take him. And of course, I was disappointed. I was thinking I was going to be that pick. So I was like, okay, great. Then it's going to be good. I'll go somewhere else and it's going to work. So of course, the entire draft circles all the way back around to the second round pick of the Cincinnati Bengals. And the only thing and the only time that I ever totally relaxed in that draft was for that pick, because they had already taken a wide receiver in the first round. So then up comes the pick in the second round. The Cincinnati Bengals take Cris Collinsworth. And my mom got up and ran back to the bedroom crying because I was going to this horrible city and this horrible team and this horrible organization. My agent, by trying to protect my feelings in the first round, destroyed everybody in the second round.
Now, you weren't nearly as sophisticated then, as you are now. You were born in Kentucky, but raised in Titusville, Florida, went to Astronaut High School. What was that old beat up car you showed up to Cincinnati in?
The best part about it, you mentioned David Verser, who was the first round draft pick. And David, if you'll remember, bought a brand new red Mercedes when he came to Cincinnati, right? And I intentionally kept my Bobcat. Now, a Bobcat is a slightly watered down Pinto, if you can imagine that. So yeah, I had a signing bonus. Yeah, I could have bought a car, but I was thinking, I haven't earned anything. I haven't done anything. So I'm going to drive my Bobcat to training camp and I'm parking it right down there. And as soon as I saw David Verser's red Mercedes, I told myself I'm going to park my Bobcat right next to that red Mercedes every single day. Every single day I go to practice, I'm going to walk past my Bobcat and his red Mercedes, and I'm going to remind myself that I'm a second round draft pick and he's the first round draft pick and I got a long way to go. So every single day coming out of the lunchroom or out of the little dorm rooms with no air conditioning and the cots where the offensive linemen's butts would drag the ground, those little college spring cots, that I walked right past those two cars and it made it just a little easier to go to practice.
Yeah, I remember, I guess it was my second year. I backed up Virgil Carter, my rookie year, and Greg Cook was trying to make a comeback then. And he had said something in the paper, how what the Bengals needed was somebody to lead them, to take them to where they wanted to go. And I had those articles on the back of my door and saw those everywhere. So stuff like that really can inspire you.
It is funny. People talk about the newspaper clippings and all that stuff, and it's all garbage. Nobody pays any attention. I'm like, oh, yeah, we do. Oh, yeah, because it's hard, right? You go to training camp, and back in the days, that was real training camp. I mean, that was Forrest Gregg, who was from Vince Lombardi. And I mean, up downs to start every day, 50 of those up downs and full pads twice a day. And it was real. I mean, that stuff was real. So you needed to find a little added motivation anywhere you could find it. And I still think the great coaches take those little newspaper clippings. And, it used to be that I've heard coaches accuse each other. Mike Ditka accused Joe Gibbs when I was on the NBC show with those two guys that you would make up. You're supposed to be this strong Christian guy, Joe. You would make up stuff that I said about your team that I never said. And Joe would just sit there and laugh. He admitted it. He goes, I did. He goes, I didn't care. Anything I could to get my guys mad and ready to go whip your Bears.
Now, you talk about training camp with Forrest, and it was tough. And the thing that I remember was the Oklahoma drill, where there's two dummies and there's a defensive player and an offensive player and a running back behind. And all I had to do was hand off. But, everybody thinks, well, it's offensive linemen doing it. Wide receivers had to do the Oklahoma drill as well. Had you ever done that at Florida coming up?
I had done it before, and I wasn't very good at it. I've done it on both sides because I was a safety in high school and a quarterback, and I've been the running back, and I've done the whole thing. But it's a little different deal when you're sitting there watching Anthony Munoz and Max Montoya in front of you blocking against some of the great defensive tackles that we had on our football team, and you're the one running the ball. Because there's no way to get yourself prepared when you weigh 180 pounds soaking wet and you know what's about to happen to you. But I also knew that being the skinny guy, being the second round draft pick, they were going to measure me up. At that moment, everybody on the team is watching to see how big a wuss I really was. And so no matter what happened to me, I'd already made the commitment. If they have to drag me off of here in a stretcher, I'm slamming in there. I'm not making any moves. I am going to go in there and establish, at least I'm going to give this a shot. That was a bad idea, by the way. That was a very bad idea. I still have those headaches from those days, but Forrest Gregg was such a intimidating guy. I don't know if you had ever really been around anybody quite like him.
No.
But I can remember when he came walking down the hall towards me and I was coming at him the other direction. I turned like a salmon looking at a bear and went back upstream. Like I didn't even want to cross the guy in the hallway. He was the most intimidating guy that I think I had ever been around, that I had ever played for. I remember the first time I tried to shake his hand. I felt like a 3-year-old shaking a grown man's hand. I couldn't even get my fingers around his hand to shake his hand. He was a big guy.
Well, remember we started off practice. You mentioned the up downs. I mean, we're doing 70 up downs, and then that's taking a lap around the field. And then I'm trying to call cadence coming off the ball, and I couldn't catch my breath. And, my arms are hanging off, and, put some touch on the ball, Anderson. I said, I just did 70 up downs. What do you mean put touch on the ball?
Only Isaac Curtis truly had it figured out. He claimed he had the wrist injury and he did sit-ups the whole time. I'm like, he's already the smartest guy on the football team.
Well, the other guy thought he had it figured out was McAnally. He would kind of go down when the head coach he just kind of go down and touch his hands on the ground until one day the projector goes on in the meeting and Forrest had filmed the up downs and he got busted.
Speaking of McAnally, do you have a better story than McAnally when the night of the rookie party and we all destroyed the dorms at Wilmington College in a way they had never been destroyed before? I'm telling you, it was like we were all 2-year-olds. You had the whole thing with the water bucket leaning against the door and the pig in the dorm, and Dan Ross retaliated with a goat in the dorm or whatever it was. I mean, it was one of those nights. And Forrest Gregg had already let it be known that we were dead. And we were all assembled in the meeting room. And whatever the punishment was going to be, it was going to be significant. So Forrest had this way of calling roll. And he would, and you were always the first one, I think, but he would go in and he'd go, Anderson, here, Breach, here, Ritz, here, Collinsworth, here, and that's the way every meeting started. So he got down to McAnally and he said, McAnally, nothing. McAnally, nothing. McAnally. And with that, Pat McAnally, our punter from Harvard, the only guy to ever have a perfect score on the intelligence test to get into the National Football League, walks in with his game helmet on, his game belt, and his game socks. And that was it. Completely naked, other than that. Nobody in the room laughs, says a word. Forrest Gregg is glaring at him in a way that I thought he was going to eat him alive. And there was this brilliant 3 to 4 seconds where not a word was uttered in that room. And I think it's safe to say that Pat McAnally, as he came in singing, "Oh, I'm proud to be a Bengal, yes I am. Oh, I'm proud to be a Bengal, yes I am. Oh, I'm proud to be a Bengal." And then he looked at Forrest. And when he looked at Forrest, I'm going to say he wasn't quite as proud to be a Bengal at that moment as he was coming in the room. Forrest looked at him, and then in this one glorious moment, this growl turned into this tiny, tiny, tiny little smile. Forrest couldn't help himself, and he gave a little smile, and the room exploded in a way I have never heard before. And somehow the naked Pat McAnally from Harvard singing "I'm proud to be a Bengal" saved us all from whatever this glorious punishment was going to be.
Well, you talked about how demanding Forrest Gregg was. I seem to remember at our rookie show this year that all the vets gathered in the auditorium at Wilmington College, and Forrest was known at night to wear these loud plaid pants. And all of a sudden, on stage comes this tall, skinny rookie by the name of Collinsworth. You'd gone in his room and stolen the pants and walk out and mimic Forrest Gray. Now, how did you have the nerve to do that?
I didn't say I was very smart, but I was like, I go, okay, what am I going to do? How do you do an impersonation of Forrest Gray? That was impossible. 180 pounds, that was impossible. I couldn't do that. But the idea of putting on a pair of those gigantic pants and walking around that were I could have wrapped them 3 times around me, I think. And it got a pretty good laugh. And that's all you got to do. You got to get one laugh at the rookie show. The other one I remember though, was during training camp. And of course, I'm a rookie. I'm scared to death of everything that's going on here. And so you had to get up and sing for your dinner. And so whenever they called on you as a rookie, you had to stand up on a chair, tell your college, tell your name, and then you had to sing a song. And so my problem was I didn't know a song. I mean, other than row, row, row your boat. And I figured that's going to get, and a couple of the guys told me, it was Kenny Riley, as a matter of fact, who just passed away this past year. Kenny said, listen, I've seen this before. Nobody wants to sing, right? He goes, what you have to do is get on that chair and refuse to get down. Act like it's the greatest thing that ever happened to you. Don't throw me in that briar patch kind of thing, right? And so through the end of training camp, I had learned one song, Proud Mary. I listened to it 400 times on my CD player. Remember CD players?
Oh, yeah.
I had Proud Mary and I played it over and over. Thank God it only had 3 verses. And when they called on me, I got up and I said, all right, Cris Collinsworth, University of Florida. And I launched into, I left a good job in the city, working for the man every night and day, but I never lost 1 minute of sleep. And I refused to get down. I must have sung that song 6 times. By the end of it, the entire defensive line came up and tackled me off, dragged me back off of my seat. I never got called on again. It was the greatest advice I had ever heard in my life.
No, you mentioned Kenny Riley, one of our teammates, and I don't know why he's not in the Hall of Fame. He's 4th on the list for a number of interceptions in a career with 65. The 4 guys in front of him are all in the Hall of Fame. He did it in an era when quarterbacks only threw the ball for most of his career 20 times a game. And I know he was always great with young receivers during practice, helping out. How did he help you, Chris?
He was unbelievable. Out of everybody I played with, I think that he probably was the most unselfish human being that I ever was around. He would go out in one-on-one drills and practice. Remember now, Kenny was probably 12 to 14 years in the league at this point. So there had to be a lot of questions about whether or not he still had it or not. So when he would go against David Verser and I, the top 2 draft picks, he killed us both. I mean, he was just that good, right? He knew what I was doing before I knew what I was doing. But afterwards, he would always sort of walk with me back to the huddle. And, Kenny was so humble. And he'd say, well, you dropped you stopped moving your hands on that one, or you leaned back on that route and that tipped me off or whatever. But he gave me more of an education on what I was doing wrong and what I was doing right. And he was doing it in a way that made me better and gave me a chance to beat him and take his job or his spot on this roster away from him. I'll never forget. He was also the guy that tipped me off on the Turkey Day thing, where they gave you a map as a rookie, right? That went on, you're supposed to go pick up turkeys for all the veterans. And this map was drawn like in pencil, and it went out in the middle of Indiana somewhere to nowhere. I mean, you spent your entire off day driving around some back roads of Indiana, and there was no turkey farm, there was no nothing, but you were scared to death to come back without having turkey. So a lot of guys went to Kroger and picked up a turkey. I'm like, forget that. I'm not doing any of that stuff. But he tipped me off in advance and he goes, hey, dude, ain't no turkey farm. And I was like, I love him.
It was known some rookies went out to the middle of Indiana, couldn't find it, came back to Spinney Field, and so we couldn't find it. No, you made a wrong turn here. And they would go back out again looking for it. Now, you know, when you came in, you must have thought the NFL was really easy. You come in 81, you know, you work your way, you're a starter. You gain over 1,000 yards. You're rookie of the year. We go to the Super Bowl. You go to the Pro Bowl. I mean, what's the big deal with the NFL?
Piece of cake, huh? Yeah, piece of cake. It was the funniest part to me was that how many times I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I mean, if you remember back in those days in Lindy's offense, we ran so many option routes. The smash route alone had about 50 things you could do off of it. The option route had so many different things. So I'm coming off the ball, and if the free safety blitzes, I've got to break off the route and run a slant. So now I'm trying to remember what the play is, first of all, what I'm supposed to do, which option I'm supposed to do off of that. Oh, by the way, I'm supposed to look at the free safety and see whether or not he's blitzing out there. I can remember a touchdown that we had in Baltimore in which I took off and I made the wrong read coming out. I was supposed to go here. Now I'm in completely the wrong place. Instead of doing whatever I was supposed to do, I broke to the corner. And somehow through all that mistakes that I made, you found me, threw me a touchdown pass. And some reporter asked me about it after the game. And I said, dude, I had no idea what I was doing. I go, Kenny just threw me the ball and I caught it. That's exactly what happened on that play.
Okay. All right. I want our viewers now to kind of remember this email address. It's info@kenandersonalliance.org, because we're going to do our trivia question tonight. So I don't want you to blurt out this answer, Chris. We'll tell them what it is at the end of the show. But, you know, you were led the SEC in passing, were an All-American at Florida. But what NCAA record does Cris Collinsworth hold? And the first correct answer to info@kenandersonlive.org is going to get a Keystone Light t-shirt.
Yeah.
Every other correct answer is going to get a Ken Anderson Alliance Stadium Strides water bottle. So that's what NCAA record does Cris Collinsworth hold? We'll get to that in just a minute. But, you know, I want to, you know, you're telling funny stories, and I got a tweet. I'm on Twitter now, in case you didn't know that. But I got a tweet from Randy, and he was listening several years ago to you and one of our good friends, Turk Schoner. Again, lost him way too soon. But you were on Sports Talk together, and the story, he couldn't remember what it was. He just remembers rolling on the ground laughing, but it had something to do with Turk and a doctor's appointment and a nurse. Do you recognize the story at all?
Which one? Oh man, I'm not sure I know exactly what it is. I will say that Turk had probably the worst moment I've ever seen. And I won't be able to use the language on your fine podcast here that was exact. But we were at the horse track, which we had occasion to do. So Turk, for some reason, had decided that this 50-1 horse was going to win. And Mike Battaglia is our good buddy who set all the odds for the Kentucky Derby and all that kind of stuff, sitting there, and he said, Turk, this horse has no chance. There's no chance. So we're all looking at the form, Jeff Ruby and all the idiots that we used to go out with to the horse track. And we're sitting there, and I go, Turk, you can't bet on this horse. You're just wasting your money. He goes, I don't care. He goes, I just got a feeling. I got a feeling on this horse. So it was a mile race. It was one lap around the track at Turfway Park. So they start out the race. They open the gates, and Turk's horse takes off like a bat out of hell. Boom, flying. Gets to the first turn, it's a couple lengths in front. Gets down the back stretch, expands it out to 5. Hits the top of the stretch, he's 8 lengths in front. Turk's got $50 on a 50-1 horse. I can't even do the math. Probably $5,000, something like that. It was more than Turk made that year. So he's sitting there, and this thing is coming down the stretch. So now this 50-1 shot, the inevitable starts to happen. He's still got us 8-length lead. Now it's down to 6. We're approaching a little closer to the wire. It's down to 4. Here comes another horse charging at him. It's down to 2. They're getting close to the wire. Turk's horse is trying to hang on for dear life. Turk is now standing up in this entirely packed inside auditorium. And he's got his program in his hand and he's pounding it. It's like, come on with you now. Come on with the horse. Come on with you. He's screaming at the top of his lungs. And just as they hit the wire, this other horse, shoom, goes right past Turk's horse, loses by about a head. And Turk screams out, how can I say this? You, whatever the worst word you can think at this moment, right? And Turk is standing there, and he's still standing there like growling at this horse. Everybody in the entire place, because when a horse race finishes, it's like, right? There's this big thing. And Turk hits him with, you blah. Everybody in the whole place is turned around looking at Turk, and he has no idea. He is just standing up there glaring. Everybody knows he's Turk Schonert. Everybody knows who's the quarterback of Cincinnati Bengals, and he has just made a damn fool out of himself in front of everybody in the building. That's our boy.
That wasn't the first time Turk ever did that making a fool out of himself.
No.
Here's one for you. 8 years with the Bengals, you're in both Super Bowls. I was, the quarterback in one. Boomer was the quarterback for the other. And, kind of how did you see the two quarterbacks in your eyes? I will remind you that you went to 3 Pro Bowls, and I was your quarterback for all 3 of those Pro Bowls. But, I want to refresh your memory there. But, how did you see us?
The good news was that I have one answer for your podcast and another for Boomer. So it works out great. I have no problem. But in all honesty, the biggest difference, people would ask me about my rookie year and, why do you think that things worked out the way they did? And, is it that easy getting open in the NFL? And I was like, I'm no more open than I ever was. The ball is just being thrown where it's supposed to be thrown. I mean, when you're in college, you're playing with college quarterbacks. When you're in the NFL, you're playing with Kenny Anderson and Boomer Esiason. And I think it's fair to say that you were probably, and all jokes aside, the most accurate quarterback maybe in the history of the league. I mean, how many passing titles you win? 4, something like that? 4 passing titles, 1 MVP. We all choked in the Super Bowl, not you, the rest of us. We all played the most horrible half of football that any of us played in the first half. But for that, you threw for 300 yards in the game. You would have been the MVP of the game if we'd won it. And instead, we go limping out of there. We still had a chance to win at the end, which was unbelievable. You hit me on a bomb. We get the ball down to the 1-yard line, 3rd down and 1, can't make it. 4th down and 1, can make. It's just one of those games. It's just one of those awful games. But that's what I remember about it, is that there was no way to drop your pass. It just was impossible. You threw it in a way that was so catchable. The tight spirals, the accuracy, the option routes that you and Dan Ross had, where you just simply. I mean, you threw it before Dan Ross was thinking about turnaround. When I ran it, it's the same way. It was an amazing group. I think out of the 2 teams, everybody talks about the 88 game because we got beat in the last 30 seconds. But I'll always sort of take with me the most disappointing football game that I ever played was the Super Bowl in 81. Because I honestly, I'll go to my grave thinking we were the better team. And we just had that day, we just had that day in the first half of that game. And the thing that still pisses me off to this day is that you're not in the Hall of Fame. And no matter how many times I preach this message, it doesn't seem to be getting me anywhere. So I'm not finished with it. But that's the truth. That is what I tell people anywhere I go, anybody who'll listen, even if they won't listen, I tell them the same story.
Well, I hope people can hear me because we are in my garage and the garage door is open for air. There is a thunderstorm and it's pouring rain. So I hope people can see or hear me a little bit. But, near the end of your career, I mean, you were immensely popular in Cincinnati. And at the end of your career, you signed that futures contract with the Tampa Bay Bandits, the USFL. What was that all about?
You know what it's like to negotiate with Mike Brown. I mean, back in that day, there was no free agency. Basically, he laid a contract in front of you and you signed it. I mean, if you wanted to retire, you could retire, but there was nowhere else to go. All of a sudden, the USFL comes along, and Steve Spurrier is the coach, my former coach at the University of Florida, and they make a big move to sign me. And I said, well, I've got 2 more years under my contract. And we go, we don't care. And they said, we don't care. And they gave me a big signing bonus. They gave me a signing bonus that was worth more than I was making my first 4 years with the Cincinnati Bengals. And I was like, I'm not that bright, but I'm going to sign that thing. That sounds like a pretty good idea to me. But by the time I got down there 2 years later, the league was basically folding up and came back and never played it down for them.
Now, you and I have 2 things in common. One, we were both academic All-Americans. And the second one is we both have law degrees. Now, I got mine when I was playing, and right about that time, I got a beer distributorship. It happened to be the first Coors distributorship east of the Mississippi over in northern Kentucky. So whoa, there it is.
Whoa.
So my relationship with Keystone Light, it goes back a long ways. And then, when I retired, I went into broadcasting over at with KRC Radio and TV. Did you ever think about practicing law?
I always tell people, because it took me 5 years to go through law school. Unlike you were going to night school and you were doing all that other stuff. It took me 5 years to get through that thing. And people ask you, well, what's the number one thing you learned in law school? I always say the same thing, that I didn't want to be a lawyer. By the time you get finished with that, I'm like, I am out of here, man. This is crazy. But I'm always glad I did it. I had an accounting degree. I never worked a day as an accountant. I had a law degree. I never worked a day as a lawyer. But it was a heck of an education. I mean, you learn a lot about, I always tell people, I think everybody should have to go to law school, because you learn out how to buy a car, how to buy a house, how to sell real estate, how to get out of trouble, what your rights are. There's a million things you learn in law school. And I wish all of my kids had a chance to go, but they don't. So it's a great education. But as far as sitting down and dealing with other people's problems, that didn't sound like a lot of fun to me.
I don't think that I get enough credit for jump-starting your national broadcasting career.
Yeah.
I hope the house stays up here.
I think that's God sending you a zinger, but that's just between
I don't
us.
know, but it was about 91 or 92, and I was with KRC Channel 12, and I was just named the sports anchor. And Charlie Meacham, who was the CEO, wanted me to do it. And how can you say no to him? And so I was going to start in August. And right at the time that I was starting, I got a call from HBO, and they had this show Inside the NFL with Nick Bonacani and Lenny Dawson. And I was so excited about this. And then my news director said, no, you can't do that. You're going to be gone 2 nights a week. We can't have our sportscaster just starting out, our sports anchor just starting out, missing that much time. So then I hear you're the one they called, and you get the gig, and then it goes on to Fox, then it goes on to NBC, and then 15 Emmys later. None of this would have happened if I'd have said yes.
I didn't know that story. That's the first time I ever heard that story.
Oh, really?
I did not know that. Wow. Well, thanks.
Now, you were Sunday Night Football, and we go back, and I worry about all my former teammates. And you've been with NBC a long time. As I said, 15 Emmys, the number one analyst in football. I love listening to you. And do I have to worry about you? I hear that Drew Brees is going to play 1 more year, and then he's going to NBC. You're not going to be out of a job, are you?
You never worried about me when you threw me those passes over the middle. I don't know why you'd be worried about me now.
Well, they were always low if there was a defender coming. Go ahead.
They, I mean, it's America, right? I mean, it's a competitive society. If Drew comes in there and he's a great broadcaster and they want him to do the games, they'll have him do the games. I've got 3 years left on my contract to do that. And so whatever happens, I never worried about getting cut with the Bengals. I never worried about, I've told my wife every year for the past 30 years or whatever I've been in broadcasting, this is for sure the last year. There's no way they're not going to have Joe Montana come take my job. John Elway, somebody's going to, Tony Romo, somebody's going to take my job. I know that. You know, I wasn't that good a player. I was good. I was all right, but I wasn't. So somehow I've held on to this job for 30 years. Next year may be the year. I don't know, but I don't worry about it. I really don't. I have so much fun going out to dinner with Al, doing the games, Fred Gaudelli, Drew Esikoff, I mean, Michelle Tafoya. We have a blast. I mean, we Kenny, I want you to think about when I go to a Dallas Cowboys game to call a game, I look right across the stadium in that beautiful Dallas Cowboys stadium, and Jerry Jones is sitting in the booth directly opposite on the other side. So Jerry Jones paid $1 billion for the Cowboys, paid $2 billion for that stadium. And on the other side of the field in the exact same seats, I'm getting paid to watch that game. How do you do better than that? I mean, how do you do better than that?
You know, I guess the maybe you know more than a lot of people since you're on the inside with football, but you know, the Big Ten has canceled their season. The Pac-12 has done it. Do you think we're going to have an NFL season?
I think they're going to try. I do think they're going to try, and it's a lot of games. I still think there's a lot of options that the NFL can throw at this thing. I mean, let's say that it really does become a problem. I mean, you can create a scenario in which you could have a 17-game season and only play 9 games. So let's take it from a Sunday night football perspective. If they split the NFL back into 16 AFC and 16 NFC games, played week 1 in the AFC, week 2 the NFC, alternate throughout the course of the season. So you'd have 3 primetime games of the 8 games played. Fox and CBS would split up the other 5 in any way that made sense. And maybe they're play on Saturday night. Maybe they play on Friday night now if there's no high school football. I don't know what it's going to be. But you'd only play 9 games, but you'd still get all the television money because televised would be 18 weekends or 17 weekends, whatever the case may be. So is it absolutely necessary that this thing gets pulled off and executed the way a traditional season's done? I don't think so. I think people are so desperate to watch football. And at least so far, the NFL has only had about less than 1% of the tests come back positive. So they're doing something right at the facility. Now, as we get on airplanes, as we go to hotels, as we get into meeting rooms, you know, can they keep it that way? I don't know. Does playing against somebody else, you know, create one of those situations? It didn't in baseball so far with the Miami Marlins, right? They didn't transfer the COVID that they had on to, I think it was the Phillies that had it. So I'm just trying to see how far this is going to go. I think that everybody's going to give it an effort. I wasn't at all surprised that the ACC and the SEC came back to play football. I mean, I grew up in those 2 cultures. It's kind of important to what it is, you know. And it's funny though. I heard a guy talking, we were talking about, I was in Orlando, and he was one of the big money guys from UCF, University of Central Florida. And so we were sitting around talking, and I said, well, what does not playing football, if that happens, mean to the sports program at UCF? And this guy kind of sat back in his chair, and he was like, the sports program? He said, we can't open the doors to the university if we don't play football. And I never heard anything like that. And I get the feeling that none of us have had the full perspective on what football means to universities around the country financially. And we're going to see now Ohio State, UCLA, USC, they're going to have to try and recruit off of not playing games. Do some of their players transfer? Somebody's going to look really smart. Somebody's going to look really dumb out of this, right? Either the Big Ten and the Pac-12 are going to be, thank God we did that, because there were people that got sick. There were people that died, and that was absolutely the right thing to do. Or these college students that are going to be quarantined under Nick Saban, that are probably going to take online classes instead of going into the classroom. Are they actually safer playing football because they're inside some sort of semi-bubble doing that? I don't know. But at the end of this day, we're going to come back and we're going to go, that was really smart and that was really dumb. And I honestly, I don't know which one it's going to be.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to it. I think the NFL's done a nice job, but we haven't got to that point where they get their 14 padded practices. So when guys, put on the pads and you're hitting and you're slobbering a little bit, I'm anxious to see how we get through those 2 weeks.
Yeah, I don't know how you feel about it, but I generally feel okay if I'm outside. And it's what I've read about it anyway, is that it takes sort of a sustained air conditioning, blowing COVID virus into your face for an extended period of time, indoors generally. And so I don't know. I think Americans in general want to be a little bullish, and they want to be brave, and they want to be a cowboy, and they want to go, okay, I don't care. But there's also this thing that we see so many people and friends, and we all know somebody who's passed away or is in a hospital or whatever. And you certainly don't want to see young kids. I almost kind of draw the line between professional athletes who have a players association and these college athletes who aren't represented. Like, there should be lawyers or some kind of a tribunal of some kind of these players that at least get to go into some negotiations and go, hey, this is what's important to us. We'd like to be protected. We'd like to have this additional protection. If you're not hearing their voices and they get sick, I'm a little nervous about that.
Well, I've already lied to you and all our listeners saying this was only going to go till 5:30, but I've had too much fun, and I can't thank you enough, Chris, for joining us. But we got to give the answer to the trivia question tonight.
There you go.
Of course, the NCAA record that Chris holds is he threw a 99-yard touchdown pass to Derek Gaffney your freshman year, which still stands today, although you co-hold it. I did some research. Tommy Armstrong Jr. threw one for Nebraska. There's one other guy, and I couldn't find him. Do you know who that is?
I don't, but I'll tell you this. That was the first game I ever played in college football. No kidding. I came in the game. We were beating Rice. It was like we had like a 3-touchdown lead. Derek Gaffney was the wide receiver. And I get in the huddle, and they called an out route to him. Derek Gaffney looked over out of the huddle, and he said, I want you to look at that guy who's supposed to cover me over there. He said, I'm not running an out. I'm going deep. You throw it as far as you can, Rook. And I said, what am I going to say? I said, okay. I roll out and hit this thing on the run, 99 yards. I didn't think anything of it at the time other than I was thrilled to have a touchdown in college football. And it ended up, you can't throw one farther than that. Even if you're on the very back line of the end zone, it goes down as a 99-yard touchdown pass. And so it is the ultimate trivia question. Nobody ever gets it right. Did anybody get it?
The crowd is going crazy here for you, Chris.
I love Christy and her friends.
But I can't thank you enough, Slim, for taking the time to be with us tonight. It's always fun getting together with you, and the only better time I have is when we get a chance to go out on the golf course. So maybe we can get that done sometime soon.
Let's do it, buddy. Anytime, anywhere.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate your joining us tonight. And now I want to bring Kevin back in, our executive director, to talk about kind of a couple things. And, don't forget, Kevin, how can they get their raffle tickets again?
Yeah. So feel free to go to our website. If you go to kenandersonalliance.org and click on the happy hours and raffle option, you'll be able to scroll down and select which raffle you want to buy your tickets for.
Of course, we've got an autographed jersey from me, but we've got to get $500 before we raffle that off.
Yep.
We've got a helmet, special helmet, half the old, half the new that I've signed. We got to get $750 for that. Christy and I are going to take 4 people to dinner at Walt's Hitching Post down in Fort Wright. If we get $1,000 in tickets there, and then also we've got our 4 Ultimate Airlines shuttle tickets. The value of that is about $2,500. We'll do that at the end of the year. But I know one of the things, Kevin, right now, all nonprofits have been hurt in this pandemic, and we're no different. And, right now, we're about $200,000 in the hole because of fundraising events that have been canceled. How are we surviving through this whole thing?
Yeah, so like all nonprofits, we're struggling just with fundraising. Has been a whole different ball game, I guess pun intended this year. We outdoor activities, our fundraising, those types of things have been canceled. We've been blessed with a lot of great supporters in our community that have gone to our website and donated. Another great thing that's helped is we have adults with disabilities that we employ, and we make a lot of products and sell some in-house branded products. And people have been supporting us through our retail site at the KenAndersonAlliance.org. So that's been helping. And, really just the grace of God, we've gotten lucky, and, we need that continued support. But if this COVID has done anything, it's taught us to be, quick on our feet, learn how to do things differently, and keep our supports going for the 220 people we support in our Engage program currently. And we've, adapted well. We're doing a lot of virtual programming, a lot of online activities for the adults we support. We're also doing a lot of safety training with them and providing supplies so that they can reintegrate into the community safely. But one thing that's really important too is we're finally able to start some of our community-based outings, and we've started those this month. Only 11 this month. Typically we do in the mid-20s, but it's a good chance to start getting back out there and really this connecting, be it through the virtual, through people attending these happy hours, our Zoom calls that we do with our Engage participants daily, et cetera. These connections are what keep our individuals from feeling so isolated every day. So the work we do is great. We really appreciate the support of everyone in the community, and we just encourage everyone to continue showing their support to us.
I know one of the things that we've done is we've sent a package to all our adults that do things with us. And what's in that package we sent them?
Yeah, so we sent them what we call a safety kit, and we have a safety training they can attend online. And they get hand soap, they get hand sanitizer, they get a mask, actually a couple different masks, and they get an instruction card on appropriate ways to wear masks, what social distancing is, what is 6 feet. They get real instructions on how to properly wash their hands and everything. So it's a great resource that goes out. We've sent out just over probably about 110 so far.
Yeah, and people, don't forget to go give them the address of our O2 Farms venture, where you can buy the best lettuce in Cincinnati every Tuesday and Thursday curbside.
That's right. It is the best lettuce in Cincinnati. So it's 3420 Glenmore Avenue. It's in Cheviot on the west side. It's in the back parking lot area of the Vineyard West Side Church. We have curbside pickup there on Tuesdays and Fridays from 11 to 1:30. You can come in. It's $5 per 3-ounce package. And it's great lettuce harvested right there. And we employ adults with disabilities there working in our indoor aquaponics system, and it's great. Right now with COVID, we're not able to really give tours of it, but hopefully those will open back up soon, and we'll be able to show the interior a little bit more.
And right now, normally we have our annual campaign. We started sometime after Thanksgiving, and because of the condition, we started it early. If someone wants to find out more about what we're doing and be part of our annual campaign, how can they do that?
Yeah, so great. Yeah, if our annual campaign will be kicking off in mid-September, and if you want to be a part of it, you'll automatically get notices through our mailing list if you're on our email list. If you're not, go to KenAndersonAlliance.org. And when you visit the site, you can either go to the Contact Us link and sign up, or it should automatically pop up and ask you for your email and name, and you'll get added to our list, and you'll get mailings from us with information on how you can support.
Well, this has been a lot of fun, Kevin. Thanks for helping us out tonight. And want to remind people, we're back in 2 weeks. I think it's the 27th of August, a Thursday night. We're starting off with another good friend of mine, Johnny Bench. which we're really excited about. And we just found out the next week is the Kentucky Derby. So we need a horse racing expert to come on with us. Well, I've got Steve Cawthon, who won the Triple Crown aboard Affirmed, is going to join us, give us all the insight of the Kentucky Derby, which will happen the next week. So it's great to be back with Keystones for Kenny. Again, thanks, Chris and Deanna, everybody. Thank you to our live audience here. And we'll try to keep the thunderstorms down the next time we're together, Kevin.
That sounds good. That sounds good. Well, thank you guys for your time tonight.
Everybody.
We appreciate everyone. Have a great evening and go drink some Keystone Light.